Hello, folks, and welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV. I'm Al Payton at the Herald Sun, joined by three SuperCoach experts as we enter the second round of the finals, round 21 of the home and away season. So we're getting close to the finish line. Limited moves that we can make at this stage. If you've got any trades left, you're in a very fortuitous and enviable position. So throw your questions into the comments and we'll try and help you out if we can, and also talk about captains and anything else we can do to try and get the best score possible. So the Phantom has jumped on from the lair over in South Australia and the KFC SuperCoach investor Dan Bagala. And we've also got JD with us from Fantasy Take TV. Check out their videos on YouTube if you don't already. Great SuperCoach advice there. And this would actually be a good week to give it a look, because George, the host on there, didn't have the best week in SuperCoach. A few things went against him, so it makes for a pretty entertaining viewing. I think we've all been there. But JD, welcome. Great to have you on board.
Thanks for having me, boys. The pleasure as always. And yes, George's video this week was an absolute cracker. I love it anytime he spits the dummy. And usually it's been me all year this year, not having Sicily and Brody for the most part. I've been down a fair bit. So to see roles reversed for even just 1 week was very pleasurable.
Yeah, I think he was really dudded by this. There's a few moves last week that caught people out, or a few people. If you were lucky enough to be on the right side of it, someone like the Brad Ratton playing funny buggers with naming Tom Campbell in the ruck and then pulling him out at the last minute, and Rowan Marshall went absolutely bananas, and some other interesting sub moves. Someone like Hugh Dixon being named the sub and then coming on late and only scoring a handful of points, or Maurice Rioli Jr.'s done that a couple of times now too. But George. Darcy Fort coming on as a sub and ruining his SuperCoach team was probably not something you would have seen coming. But we'll get into this week very shortly. But Phantom, welcome aboard. I know you've had a rough couple of weeks, but I mean your ranking is still much higher than mine, that's for sure. But how are you placed coming into round 21? Do you have any trades left?
Hello, Alistair. Now you're being nice to me. I see. Just recovering from the official KFC SuperCoach podcast, and you and the team, Dan Button, Tim Mitchell, the absolute pile on over the Phantom. I'm still ahead of. I think Tim is the closest one to me. I'm still over 200 points ahead of him. So, you guys, some big words on that podcast for where you are. But we recorded a layer this morning that'll be out on Thursday afternoon. So. You'll get my full response there. But do have one trade left. I'm struggling. I'm just staying afloat. Dan Bagala's almost got me. As I mentioned, I'm happy for the People's Champ to go past me. A very gracious man. Happy for him to go past me. He's played very well. I'm going to hold my one trade again. I think I just have to wait until I have to use it. I'm stuck with Tom Green. I want to trade him out. I wanted to trade him out 2 weeks ago, and had the Rowan Marshall move locked in before the George Hewitt injury forced me. I was going to have a donut, so I had to move him on instead, but now stuck with a sub 400k Tom Green, who I can't do much with. So I'll probably keep the one trade up my sleeve until I have to use it. There's no injury then, probably in the final week. But for now, just trying to hold on. Need a few of my guys to lift.
What's your take on Tom Green? I know you've been on him since the start, but is it a role thing, or just the Giants? It was Spike McVeigh, right? They've just checked out.
A bit of everything. Yeah. Well, if it is true, Spike's comment about checking out, does that mean someone like a Tom Green, doesn't want to play there anymore? Might not be there in the future. Who knows? But it's always been his role there. He has pinch hits in the middle, and then just when he can't get going, and then it'll be his time to rotate forward, like it was with Josh Kelly on the weekend. And he's just off when he has the ball, and off when he gives away free kicks as well. He's been clumsy, as I said, with the ball and without the ball over the past month, and had a week off when they said he was managed, but could have been dropped and didn't really look refreshed coming back against the Swans on the weekend either. So I think it's a bit of everything with him. And, if he does stay, it's Tim Taranto, Jacob Hopper, do they move? Does Tom Green become the number one man again like he was at the start of the year? Who knows? So it's a frustrating one.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you've still got him. Dan Bagala, welcome. Any trades left at the Bagala Brigade?
Thanks, Al. And I hear your frustration, fans. It's terrible what's going on with Tommy Green over there. But one trade still left. I've used 2 last week, and that was sort of like desperation because George Leighton Hewitt was out. And obviously that issue with Treloar and Canelio. Canelio, the latest of late changes. And I just thought to myself, like, I was out and about for the day, enjoying the time with the family. And I just thought to myself, like, I have a feeling Canelio will come back. It's soreness. There was nothing listed online, so it was quite hard with the game time, starting time getting closer and closer. And I thought, I'm not going to lock myself in here until I work out what's going on there. And I had to make a call. I shorted Treloar, I shorted Hewitt, and I brought in Rowan Marshall. And the rationale for Marshall was I knew Campbell was there. I thought that's a threat. It's going to be troublesome, but I hope he plays forward. But in essence, I thought I need my team to be flexible, and now I can cover for Darcy if Darcy goes down or Witts goes down. So I've got all these layers of coverage that I've built into my team, which is all I cared about. And I said, I'll take a haircut on Marshall's output. Maybe he only averages 90 to the season's end, but he could save me a donut in the R2 position. So hence why I took him. But look, the stars aligned for me. I got really lucky. Can't really put it down to anything except as soon as I saw that tweet, I was banging out, forwarding to every mate that in town and said, it's time to holler a Marshall, boys. It's time to holler a Marshall. And we all hollered a Marshall, and he scored 179 or whatever it was, 173. So sometimes you get kissed like that, and I definitely was. And it was a really nice Saturday. But then on Sunday, I butchered my captaincy and had 3 blokes to choose from. In my mind, I said 2 of them will perform, 1 of them will underperform, and I picked Lachie Neale out of Took Miller and Zach Merritt. So it felt like I left a few points on the table. And then to add salt to the wounds, I had Tim Mitchell texting me every disposal or every tackle or every 50-metre penalty or every breath the person took. So like the Phantom, I was being ridden like Farlap. So I had a troublesome weekend on Sunday too. But look, 2,500 points, team's humming, coverage everywhere, got Tom Stewart in, that's amazing. And Rowan Marshall, I don't expect 170 every week, but the guy wants to prove to Rats that he is the number 1 man, and we don't need Paddy Ryder on the list. Like, he's going to go, I want that spot. So I kind of think that's what's going to happen. But look, hopefully he just averages 100 till season's end. I'd be really stoked with that.
Yeah, I went down to the 0 trades on the weekend. I'll talk about that in a second. We'll just quickly answer Anthony's question here. Would you use your last trade to get Marshall in this week from Darcy Cameron? Now, the other injury news that's come out today, John Ralph, it might have been Jay Clark, actually. They both followed some stuff this morning, that reporting that Brodie Grundy's little setback that he had after the VFL game last week might be worse than they thought, and he might not play again, at least for the home and away rounds. So if he's not back, Darcy Cameron hasn't been scoring as well as he was through that middle part of the year, but you probably wouldn't use your last trade, would you? I mean, how keen would you be to get Marshall in?
Well, if that's for me, I think, to be honest, I think Darcy, like, he scored 113 on the weekend and he was pretty impressive. And I guess he's going to have a tough night out with Gawn and Jackson jumping up on his sort of shoulders. But I think, like, at this point of year, like, you can't chase that FOMO points. Like, that was all the stars aligned. Ben McAvoy's coming back from a pretty substantial neck injury. He's underdone. Marshall runs him into the ground, has 30 touches, most touches he's ever had in a game, and about 30 hit outs to advantage. So that's not going to happen every week. I think Marshall's got a pretty easy run this week. Can't remember who they're playing. But I do think that Cameron is stick with him now. Oh, they got the Cats. So they've got Segler. And I mean, he sort of negated English after quarter time, which is quite frustrating. But Marshall will I think you just stick with Cameron. I think that trade's too valuable. Like, as we've said, Fandom posted a great tweet earlier in the week about 15 key players that had missed 2 games since round 14 or 15 this year. So with the carnage it's likely to ensue with COVID rampant around Melbourne and other states of Australia, I think you just got to conserve that trade and get to the finish line. And what's to say Darcy Cameron doesn't average on par with Marshall until season's end if Grundy doesn't play? And to give you another example of that, I think Dan Batten, who is now the Phantom's nemesis, he actually traded Cripps to Mills a fortnight ago. And throughout that period of time, Cripps has scored 118 and 146, including a 40-piece on Saturday night. And Mills has probably scored about 110 in those weeks. So Cripps is 40 points ahead, 50 points ahead, and just shows you there's not that much merit or upside in trading sideways in those circumstances, particularly when a trade can be worth 100 points if a player goes down and you have a gap in the team. So that's my view. I keep Darcy Cameron.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, my quick saga is that I used my last 2 trades last week to get Tom Stewart in, and I think I gained about 10 points overall from the move because I had him on the field instead of a Ware or a Buku Karmas, who was actually pretty good in the back line, but that gave me sort of 50-odd points, but then I pretty much lost most of them when part 2 of the trade. The theory was that I would downgrade a rookie off the bench, Morris Rioli Jr., one of my favourite boys, but sent him off and brought in Jai Cully, who I thought would be a pretty handy cover for the rest of the year, and had his worst game by an absolute mile. Only scored 26 or something. And I could have played a Rosas in the forward line. He was only scored 50 or so, but, there's 30 points that, pretty much cancel out what I gained at the other end. So, that didn't really work out as planned. Now I've got 0 trades, but I do have Tom Stewart, which I'm pretty happy about. And Roses hopefully will keep playing. Mitch Owens coming in and scoring okay last week was really good, so hopefully he'll keep playing, give me some coverage in the midfield, and maybe Josh Carmichael, who I can swing with Cully, has been the sub the last 2 weeks for Collingwood and been okay when he's come on, and Taylor Adams is out for the year for the home and away season anyway for the Pies. So hopefully you'd think Carmichael might be the next cab off the rank there. But, I mean, JD, just we haven't had you on for since pre-season. So, I mean, can you give us a quick wrap-up of how your season's gone? And there's a question which we might spend a bit more time on later on, in a couple of weeks, but asking about, what we've learned this year, especially when we've, had trade boosts for the first time and all these kinds of things. How have you gone and where are you sitting right now? And, what would you do differently if you can answer that all in a minute or two?
Yeah, sure. So my season started pretty poorly. In the end, I had a pretty bad starting team just because I missed a lot of the really good value options. So I didn't have Hewitt, Cripps, Sicily, Brody in my starting side. And then I also missed Nick Martin and Jack Hayes, who were pretty critical starting rookies. So I was like without 6 of the best players, which is a pretty bad position to be in. I traded in 4 of them over the first 2 weeks, so before we had the first price rise, but I still missed out on 2, and it sent me down the ranks pretty hard from there. So learning 1 is you should be okay with using a trade boost at round 2 to fix up your team if it's a really obvious fix up. So that'd be big learning 1. And then, so I think I bottomed out at around rank 27, 28,000, and I'm now back up into the top 3,000. So kind of been slowly moving up, things like making sure you plan for the buys definitely came in clutch, aiming for best 22. So I seem to have a stronger team than most at this point and not overusing trade. So I've been able to move on most of my injuries at some point. All those key kind of core concepts for SuperCoach have kind of come in handy to stabilize me. But I think the one thing I've probably underestimated is just that snowball effect of being in a good position from the start of the year. And this is it's really highlighted it to me starting this far behind how hard it is to catch up if you're not, kind of in a good spot in the first couple of weeks. So yeah, using trade boosts to fix up your team would be probably my biggest learning from the year.
And have you got any trades left? How are you looking for the last few weeks?
I have 1 trade left, but I do have Stringer floating around as cover in M9 F7. So that's been covering me, for example, for Cogs, for Oliver, that having that floating kind of semi-premium has helped me a fair bit. I had to move on Hewitt a couple of weeks ago for Himmelberg. That was the last trade I did. And so, yeah, just sitting on 1 for any injuries.
So you guys are all on the 1 and I'm down to 0. Here's a question I think, Phantom, this might be directed your way from Nathan. He's got 2 trades left. Wondering, should he hang on to Riley O'Brien or get rid of him? If my memory serves me right, you brought him in with a couple of our other colleagues. I know Tim Mitchell got him about a month ago, and he put out a couple of good scores, and then he's been pretty stinky the last couple. Where would you sit on just hanging on to him, or with 2 trades left, could you afford to try and swap him for someone else? You probably get Marshall for him. I'm not sure how much he costs, but
2 you could think about it, Nathan, especially if you don't have Marshall. That could be your move, but he's a frustrating one because when he's bad, and if you're watching him, it's not pretty to watch when you're watching Rob. But he could come out and still post a pretty good score. He's not great with the ball in hand and what he does with the footy, but when he can get on top in the ruck, and when he can get his hands on the ball in the air, which he hasn't been doing consistently this year, that's when he can still score well in KFC SuperCoach. So, depending on what the rest of your team is like, Nathan, 2 trades, I still probably look to maybe use it elsewhere. I've probably been worried if you've still got your Jack Crisp or your Jaden Shorts in defence, if you really want to go down to 1. But I'll be keeping Rob, and I'm not going definitely won't be using my last trade on him. He's a concern. He's frustrating to watch, but if you already got Marshall, then maybe you hold.
Yeah, I just looked him up. He's 475k now. Robin Marshall's 480. So as long as you got 5k in the bank, you could do a side, straight swap there, which you would, if you were, you would only want to use 1 trade if you're going to do it. The 2 other players that you mentioned is really causing a lot of headaches around the KFC SuperCoach world. A lot of us have got 1 or both of these guys. Dan Begala, if you had Crisp and Short both stinking up your defence, who would be your priority to trade out if you, assuming that you had a couple of trades left and you could afford to dump one of them, and then Aaron's asking for who the target would be.
Yeah, I mean, they've both been underperforming, haven't they? They're both in their essence and their heart, they are defenders. They're rebounding defenders. They're not inside middies or midfielders that go forward and kick goals. Like I know Short had that breakout game against the Waffle side in the West Coast game where he scored 160, but outside of that game, he's been pretty much a ghost ship, as we've been saying off air. So for me, I mean, it's always hard. I prefer if this individual, Aaron Mitchell over there, if he would just upgrade like a Were into someone else and keep them some way or another, like maybe get someone like a Stringer's price, a semi-premium, and then just loop them every week. But with Short, like I mean, not Short. Short's been a problem, but when I brought in Crisp, I think I brought him in after their bye, and he's probably not tonned ever since that 119 I think he had. So he's lost. I don't know. He's just not accumulating like he did. He's taking ages to get going at the start of matches. He's only getting to about 7 or 8 touches by half time, and he's not going on from there. So whether it's a role change, whether those 190 games straight have finally taken its toll on his body, I'm not sure what it is, but they've both been super disappointing. And I look at my defense and I think, wow, I've got the absolute top line. I've got Bob Sinclair, I've got Sicily, and I've got Tommy Stewart. And then it's just daylight and it drops down to Short, Crisp, and Ridley. And Ridley's starting to usurp those two fellas now, and he's slotting into D4, which is uncanny. But I mean, if you can do it and you've got plenty of trades left for the final 2 rounds, I'd probably go Sinclair. Like I know Redmond's on an absolute tear. He had 19 out of 19 kicks in that game against, can't remember who they played, North Melbourne, without missing a target. Yeah. So he's an absolute exquisite user of the footy, and he's going to be a must-have next year, I kind of think. One of the top 4 ranked defenders. But I go Bob Sinclair based on how consistent he's been all year. Like he's just a quarterback, never wastes the footy. He's an honest player. For me, I've loved having him in my side since that Melbourne game back in round 10 or 11, whenever it was. He's a fantastic player. Has to be the BNF at St Kilda, in my opinion. And all Australian.
The only thing I will say with that, Sinclair's lowest score for the year, I think, was the Ryan Clark affected tag of 79 a few weeks back. And the Saints do play the Swans in KFC SuperCoach Grand Final week in round 23. So potentially Sinclair did move forward that, played it for higher up the ground and saved his score in the second half. But just on Mason Redmond, talk about how his effective kicks there. I think since round 12, he's had 156 disposals and 149 have been effective. Sorry, let me say it again. 156 disposals since round 12, 149 of them have been effective. So just highlights just how good he is with the ball in hand, by foot and hand. So I agree with Dan about next year. And 576, there's only 1.2% of teams could come in and be a real point of difference this season as well. But again, it's about the same price as Tom Stewart. So if you don't have a Tom Stewart, are you picking Redmond over Tom Stewart? Probably not. But if you do already have Stewart, then I don't mind him as a point of difference.
Yeah, I mean, the other one we need to mention, Phantom, is your boy. I don't know if you're trying to keep him to yourself, but Jordan Dawson has actually dropped in price a bit from the heights. He got up to, 620, 630K. He's now down to around 555, I think, after a few, quiet-ish games, scoring 80s and 90s, but another 120 last week. And the Crows have an amazing run coming home. They play West Coast and North in the next 2 weeks, and then finish it with a showdown against the Power. So, yeah, I suppose a lot of people have him already, but I don't, and I would love to get him if I could. But obviously, with zero trades, that's not going to happen. JD, you want to take this one from Link, asking about Crisp as well, but saying, do you go Redmond? Could you use the Himmelberg swing and get Marshall in instead in the forward line? So I think you're a Himmelberg owner, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And which I think Phantom is too, as of late. And last week was a bit frustrating, but at least he's still handy to have to be able to swing him from one end to the other.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question. If the second part of this is swing Himmelberg to defense and get in Marshall, and it isn't using up the second trade, then I think that's obvious, right? Using like just one trade versus 2, but it's not clear from the question whether that's the case. So assuming that they're using 2 trades in both scenarios, I'm not sure I would use 2 trades on either of these, to be honest. I think like going down to 0 is probably a little bit risky. So yeah, I'm just not sure I would use it. But if I was forced to, I think I would prefer to get Marshall in over Redmond for the remaining games. It's a little bit tricky just because I don't think Marshall's lineups from a ruck perspective are particularly great. I think Geelong's been actually fairly effective at mitigating rucks, and what we saw with the Dogs, with Blitzer starting on Bont and then running around with English, I think we could very much see something similar happen with Rowan, where Blitz starts on Steele and then runs around the ground with Marshall, which might limit his scoring. Then for the Lions, like Oscar McInerney has been restrictive historically, although that hasn't necessarily proven to be the case recently. And who knows what they're doing with Fort, right? Only George and Brisbane Lions know. And then the Swans, I think, has been an all right matchup just because Hickey hasn't found form. Redmond's got 2 pretty easy matchups remaining, and then Port in the middle, which I think have been a little bit tougher to score on. So it's always really hard, right? Like as experts, we tend to look at what do players average over 22 games, and that's what we're trying to predict for the most part. When you get down to 3-game sample size, you do introduce a lot of variance. So I think they're both good picks. I'd probably lean more Marshall than Redmond just because of the proven history as a solo ruck, but I definitely could see Redmond outscoring Marshall from here.
Yeah, but like you say, you only need, if you take the last 3 weeks, Redmond's had 2 absolute monsters, and then he was subbed out in the other game. So it just shows in a short period of time. It's pretty hard to predict. And, you might pick a Jack McRae or someone who's one of the top scoring players in KFC SuperCoach, and he averages 101 for 3 weeks. So it makes it tricky. Question here, maybe Dan Bagala Taran asking here, 3 trades left, so you could definitely afford to use one at least. Is Chris for Stewart still the obvious move? So Stewart back last week, scored about 110, so it's pretty good, but we know what he's capable of. But he's also got Dan Rioli, who, has been pretty good, but probably not at that same premium level. He doesn't have Luke Parker, and the Swans play North on Sunday, and you'd think there's some pretty big points on offer there.
Yeah, I like the third option there, Dan Rioli, the rebounding defender at Richmond to Luke Parker. Luke Parker was fantastic on the weekend, and I guess he'll probably fill his boots against North Melbourne like most midfielders have. Might go head-to-head with Hugh Greenwood or maybe one of the young Bucks, Jai Simpkin. But I don't know. I still feel like there's a bit of egg that can be on your face in those circumstances when you trade a Short or a Crisp. As JD's alluded to, we're only looking to fill a gap here for 3 weeks, and who's to say that Short doesn't have 3 scores of 120? We know it's probably not going to happen, but that can happen. And alternatively, Stewart only averages 95 to the season's end. Like, he was lucky to get to 112 on the weekend. He didn't have that much influence. I think Guthrie cut a few intercepts off, which was really frustrating. And I think he alphaed him a few times when he was pretty much free and ready to take the mark. It's a bit oxymoronic, little fella Zach Alfred and Tom Stewart. Both got the same haircut, trying to emulate one another. But I think I'd go with the third option, Rioli to Luke Parker. Luke Parker will finish the year, as the Swans will, in the top 4, pushing for a really nice spot in the final series. And Parker's just hitting every stats category. He's getting tackles. He might not be using the ball as well as you like, but he's at the coalface when it's hot and it's hard. So for me, that option there with Rioli to Luke Parker is probably the easiest, simplistic one. But with the trades you've got there, I think Taran could certainly consider maybe one of those defenders, shorting them to the likes of Redmond or Tom Stewart.
Yeah.
Just on Tom Stewart, sorry. Are you worried about him getting tagged at all this week? Like someone like Owens giving him attention, or even like them using Windhager in the forward line to tag Stewart? Yeah,
I definitely am. I mean, I was worried about that when I first picked him. I thought that would be a chance for the Dogs. I thought Riley West would do the job, and I think he kind of tried and he did it. But I think that's the way I've visualised it. It was like the bloke's been out for 4 weeks. He committed an act on the footy field that he has to make up for, and I thought he'd just come back raring to go. That was my view in my head. I thought he'll be raring to go, he'll be physically fit, he'll be right to go, and he will be on his best, at his best. And I think that's what he was like against the Dogs, because I thought he did well with the attention that he had. But I guess when you're a kick-out merchant and you can stat pad by about 8 to 10 touches per week just running out of the box at the goal end, I think that's what saves me on that front. But look, if Windhager goes to him or Owens goes to him, good luck to him. Like, he's the best intercepting defender in the game. Like, how many people have got him this year? Like, in your opinion, how many people have caught him and really made his life challenging? Because I think he's had 1 or 2 games where he got really heavily tagged. Maybe it was at the West Coast game. I think not what's the blonde bloke's name that tags in West Coast? You'd know the name, JD. Young buck, he went to the club, had COVID, brought COVID back to the club. Jackson Nelson tried to tag him in the West Coast game.
Michael Cra.
Well, no, it was Jackson Nelson. He kept him under 100. But look, there's a worry every week, but I back these champs in. Like, the guy can go 180 or he can score 90. When he gets tagged, he still scores pretty well, I think. But yeah, obviously there's a bit of risk. Windhager did a fantastic job 2 weeks ago against TK. It'd be a big step up if he can do it against Stewie in a different role, but good luck.
Yeah, there's a few tags floating around now, which we might talk a bit more about with captaincy and Finn McGuinness, these sort of guys that might be potential problems. But fans, some quick one for you, Corey. We know he's been watching every week. He's got the short, crisp issue, and he's also got Liam Baker, one of the hipsters' favourites.
Yep.
And he's got some money, but yeah, it's down to I think he's got to see one trade left. So there's a couple of questions here. Someone saying final trade, crisp to Dawson. I mean, is your answer to all of these just save the trade?
Yeah, I think so. Especially in Corey's spot here, he says he's going for league glory now. So he's obviously deep in the KFC SuperCoach finals in his head-to-head league, and I'd definitely save a trade because vital it could be if you make it to the grand final or the prelim and you need to make a late round trade even to get that final jump on your opponent. It's all about who you're playing now if you're going for the league. So Corey, I definitely hold in that situation.
Yep, sorry, just got caught on the wrong screen there. I like this one from Alex. We might go around the table before we get to some captain's question without notice, but one burn man that you would never pick again on this list. I mean, I could say Dane Zorko. I did have him for about 3 weeks. Actually, JD, I think he might be in the same boat, which was a terrible decision. Although, having said that, what is he now? He's about 350K and scoring well again if you want an absolute bargain defender. But you would definitely want to have some coverage on the bench if you went down that road again. But I won't be picking Dane Zorko again. But Dan Pagala, is there someone that you've put a line through after 2022?
I kind of think it's obviously Bruce is one of them. Like he's one of the main standouts for that category. But I was lucky to trade him as soon as he had that first problem. But I think he's actually going to be a bit of a problem. But I think Tim English really frustrated me this year. I had him in and out twice. He got concussion. He's been tepid since he's come back. He's just been like running around scoring 80s, and he hasn't been really just influencing the games like he did from rounds 1 to 6 when he was probably the most informed ruckman in the comp. It's going to take a lot of courage to pick him next year, but I mean, he'll probably force my hand again. He's a fantastic player when he's up and about, but just post concussions this year and last year, he was pretty like underwhelming thereafter. So he's one that I'm a bit cautious of, and Zach Butters is always going to be on that list because he doesn't know how his middle name is injury. So that's someone I might have to avoid as well.
He scored 120 last week, so back in the good books potentially. But the rucks next year are going to be really hard, I think, but really interesting, especially if Grundy, if that's right, and he doesn't play again. He's only played 6 games this year, so he could get like a 20% price discount at the start of the year. But I mean, who knows where he'll be playing? Is he going to be the number 1 ruckman for Port Adelaide or for GWS? Maybe it'll be him and Bruce. He'll be the new Matty Flynn. So yeah, who knows? We'll talk about that next year. But Phantom, you've had a fantastic year, but things maybe not going so well of late. Is that you couldn't put Tom Green on this list, surely?
No, I can't put him on. As you guys said on the podcast, I'll probably pick him next year. Probably will, depending on what happens with his off season. But yeah, probably has to be Braden Bruce or even another giant, Lockie Whitfield, who's let us down a couple of times. Obviously, Lockie Whitfield, it goes in line with the role and the coach, so it could change again potentially next year at the Giants. But Braden Bruce right at the top, Lockie Whitfield not far behind, but Tom Green off that list for now.
Yeah, Anthony's got a good suggestion there. Aaron Hall as well, just with all the injuries. But JD, who's on your who's burnt you the worst this year?
I mean, the easy answer is GWS. Just put a line through all of them unless we get a coach that we can be confident in. But outside of them, I think Zorko was the one that first came to mind, Hall, and then also DeGoey, who I owned for a brief stint this year, and he goes on the never again list probably for me. Oh, and Crisp. I'm happy to put Crisp in that bucket because he's going to be mid only next year, and he's out of my mind next year. So yeah, no Crisp.
I lost the comedy, but I think someone actually raised DeGoey as a possible trade in this week. I mean, he scored 100 last week, and he must be very cheap, but I don't think I'll be doing that. But it'll be interesting again. Like he's going to be very affordable next year if he's at another club. Whether that will change things up. But we're going to look at captains for this week, and a bit like last week, we just get one very important question just dropped in from Abdul, the overall leader in KFC SuperCoach, who's clinging to the number 1 spot. I think he's about 10 points in front. With 0 trades left, and he's got George Hewitt and Jacob Ware at his defence, who are both out. We know Ware out for 2 to 3 weeks. If people miss that news, and Hewitt Blues saying week-to-week proposition and won't play again this week. So Abdul's staring at a donut unless Luke Cleary must be his other bench defender. I think I'm not sure there's any real likelihood of that happening, but we can cross our fingers. You never know.
So the Dogs announced, I don't know, maybe an hour ago that Sam Darcy's going to debut, which I think makes the chance that Cleary plays very low, unfortunately.
Yeah, wow. Okay, it'll be good to watch Sam Darcy in action. But JD, have you thought much about captains this week? A bit like last week, where there's lots of potential good options, but and if you're like me and you've got Jai Culley in the last game of the round, you've got a 0 there that you can basically pick anybody you like, but that almost sometimes makes it harder having too many choices. Who do you like?
Yeah, I think if I had Mills against North into lead against West Coast seem like the two standouts for me. And if you don't own one of them, well, then I think it's pretty easy as to who your captain should be. Otherwise, it looks like Took against Hawks should be pretty good. The concern there would be a McGuinness tag, and Miller has shown that he's been susceptible to a tag at points throughout the year. Merritt against GWS is a similar concern that Ash might go to Merritt. So both of these are okay as VC options, but I wouldn't put the captaincy on them. And then on Friday night, we've got Melbourne against Pies, and Pies have been giving up pretty big scores to midfielders. So trusting Oliver with the vice captaincy over the last couple of weeks seems hard, but I think that's a pretty positive matchup and you could see a bounce back. Otherwise, you could go Petrarca, who's shown to have a really good ceiling and becomes a really nice vice captaincy option. But I'd be putting the C on either Mills or Laird, and then the vice captaincy, you've kind of got a few options that are all high upside, but potentially getting tagged this week as well.
Yeah, Dan Bagala, what do you think? Should Paddy Cripps be back in the captaincy conversation?
Yeah, I agree with JD on that front because Miller was where I was heading, and I thought about McGuinness. McGuinness has been doing those really interesting tag roles. He's done Langdon on the outside. He's done Sinclair behind the ball. He's done Smokey Dawson behind the ball. He's not really done the inside mid yet, so I'm interested to see how he goes with the Took because sometimes I actually don't mind when players are tagged. It just increases their propensity to win the contested stuff. And if you're a bull in a china shop like Took Miller, he's the best. I watched on the weekend. I said to my mates, I said, he is the best Superman handball on the comp. When he is diving in the air, he is the best. Like, the guys love taking photos of him when he's in that position, and he's a great player. But I think I'll go Miller. It's probably going to be Miller into probably Cripps or Neil in that Brisbane Lions versus Carlton affair, because it's going to have a lot of impact on the finals. Because I feel a little bit once bitten, twice shy by Oliver. He's had two pretty underwhelming performances since returning with his Franklin glove. And it's been really hard to pick him. And I mean, Petrarca is forecasted to go 130 tomorrow night, and he loves the big stage. He's done it on grand final day. He did it last week against Freo when the chips were down. And I could flirt with Petrarca, but then, as JD's alluded to, there's not much. It doesn't leave you too confident when your captaincy solution the next day is very big chance of being tagged. That's a problem. And the other tag there could be Connor Nash, big-bodied inside sort of player who's done a job like that in the past. So I do have worries with Sam Mitchell. He does play that defensive on the best player. He identifies the best player and then he just tries to thwart them. So I do have my worries on Took, and I'd love to VC him instead of C.
Well, Took Miller, 3 of his last 5 games have been over 150. So he's in a pretty good run of form. I don't know if he did cop a tag, didn't he, earlier in the year and had one really shocking game. But I think I could probably trust him. But then, Clary's pretty tempting on the Friday night, given, as JD said, Collingwood tends to give up big scores to opposition midfielders. I mean, we've got all these Bulldogs, but would you trust any of them phantom against the Dockers, especially when you've got James H floating around? I could see him floating up next to Marcus Bontempelli.
Yeah, I don't think so. Luke Beveridge spoke as well in the past 24 hours about the Bont's got a bit of a cork, a bit of an issue. So he should be fine, but used the word should. So it's probably enough to avoid that game. I like the other options, the guys. So I'll probably use Callum Mills for me in some way. But with Clary, people scared off a little bit by his last 2 weeks. Remember, he was 80 at halftime in that first game back before the Dogs and Bont went nuts. Took all the points away, and Clary didn't have much of an influence. So Friday night VC, big game at the G, a team, as JD mentioned, give a few points to midfielders. I still think Clary should be high up on our VC list. I'll either be him into Mills or Took Miller into Mills, but probably Clary, I think. Probably hard to overlook, especially if a lot of other KFC SuperCoaches out there are a little bit scared off by what's happened in the past fortnight.
Yeah. We finish every week with our zinger of the week, and I don't know. This is a bit of insider trading. One of our colleagues, I don't know if he's allowed to claim the prize. I will have to look up the terms and conditions, but we'll give it to. I want to throw this one at the Phantom to see what he has to say. As you said on the podcast, there was a bit of banter, and Dan Batten said he couldn't come on the show, but he's obviously watching because he's thrown a comment in here. So I'll just leave the floor open to you, Phantom. How do you respond?
Absolute coward-like from Dan Batten to not come on the show, to pop me on the podcast and not face me here live on KFC SuperCoach TV. Put that comment in. It's a fair question. It is a fair question. I'm not denying that. But the way he goes about it, Dan Batten, from a bloke who he kicked 8 goals in a half, I think, in his junior footy career, but couldn't even make the SEN's media team because Tim Watson and Gary Lyon never heard of the bloke, Dan Batten. So Dan Batten here. I'm not sure what your name is anymore, but you're still 350. He's still 350 points behind me. So speak to me in a couple of weeks, and we'll see where we're at.
Very good. Nice finish to the show. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Nice, good number of questions there today. Given that there's not much time left, not many trades left, but good luck everybody. Hopefully we don't have too many late outs or chaos with the teams tonight. Phantom, been a pleasure. Dan, as always, and JD, thanks for jumping on. Just
thanks for having me.
A reminder, Fantasy Take TV on YouTube is where you can watch JD and the other guys talking SuperCoach every week as well. So check that out. And there was, of course, all our KFC SuperCoach content on the Herald Sun and Advertiser websites. And we'll catch you again soon.